The Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. College Football Playoff Championship week, boys. I'm a little annoyed, not because we have 2 charity spots, not to piss off the
immediately.
I'm annoyed.
Right out of the gate.
I'm annoyed because we ran out of Diet Dr. Pepper in my house, and I had to go with this Coke Zero Cherry. And so if I'm in a bad mood at all during this, just blame it on the fact that I didn't order any more Diet Dr. Peppers. I've got every subscription service known to man and didn't order one to be delivered today. So blame me. How's you guys' Christmas since I'm a Grinch?
I'm very excited about Christmas. Everything's good. I got my tree decorated for
Very
one.
festive.
Way more Penn State stuff on there than I'm proud of. I'm like, I love my school, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I need to like get normal ornaments, that sort of stuff. But yeah, man, like this is shaping up to be a fun weekend. Like this is the round of the college football playoff that I look forward to the most because you do get the games on college campuses. And it's my biggest gripe, I think, with the entire format. And like we worry about who's in and who's out and all that stuff. But I am so excited about like Alabama in Norman against Oklahoma. That's going to be a great atmosphere. Like this is what college football is supposed to be about. And this is what the playoff is supposed to be about. And meanwhile, we're all texting about like the FCS playoff where they've had it right for decades. And Montana State for all the while too is happening in the playoffs this weekend in Bozeman. Like this is what it's all about. I'm excited.
Guys, I thought I told you I hate Christmas. I hate holidays. So of course, I'm going to be the Grinch today because why wouldn't I be the Grinch?
Let's get started. We were a few minutes late, so I see some of the comments there. Sorry for the delay, but we are here now. So that's what's really important. We're here and we're together. Talking about that game in Norman, Alabama and Oklahoma, a rematch of just a few weeks ago when this game was in Bryant-Denny, and Oklahoma, despite being outgained by 200 yards, still found a way, thanks to a 3-0 turnover advantage, to win the game. Cole, as our SEC guy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, let's just start off with the fact that this is a game that for Alabama, you've got to be able to kind of beat the narrative around what has been the matchup with Oklahoma. And this is something that was a problem for Nick Saban during his tenure at Alabama. They struggled to beat the Sooners. I remember when they faced off against Trevor Knight in the Sugar Bowl, and they looked dreadful in 2013. So this has been a team that has had Alabama's number, and lo and behold, it's the one team that Kalen DeBoer simply just can't get past. So now you have an opportunity to kind of right the ship, keep your season alive, and really prove to the College Football Playoff Committee that they made the right call of putting you in the postseason to begin with and not leaving out a team like Notre Dame. So what are some things that we're looking for in this matchup? Let's start off with the Alabama side of things. Number one, what is going to be the health of everyone on the offensive side? You know, you didn't have Josh Cuevas to end the year. You didn't have Jam Miller for the SEC championship game. Parker Brailsford has not been at 100%. Cam Dewberry hasn't been at 100%. Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard have not been at 100%. So who is now, after the last 2 weeks, been able to take that next jump forward, use the time off to get their body right so that way they can perform at peak level when they go into Norman next on Friday night? That's priority number one. The second thing is, how much more are we going to see from this balanced approach of an offense that allows you to be kind of trustworthy when it comes to the rushing attack? I don't think that you can look at this team and say they're going to rush for 155 yards. They're going to get 2 touchdowns. They're going to be great on third down execution because they haven't been it all year. It's not just like they were bad against Oklahoma. They were terrible at running the football all season, as evident by a negative 3-yard differential in the SEC championship game. But are there ways that you can trust Jam Miller and Daniel Hill, or Jam Miller and Kevin Riley to be able to move the sticks forward on second and manageable, to where maybe on 3rd and 1, you can open up the passing attack. You can get the ball into a hand like Josh Cuevas. You can push the ball downfield to a Jeremy Bernard for a 15-yard gain. I think that that's going to be something that's really detrimental in this matchup. And then the third thing for Alabama is, well, what do we see from their passing attack that differs this time around for Ty Simpson? Simpson had some really good throws in that game against Oklahoma. He had the big touchdown pass to Cuevas, but he had a bad interception. And that interception really was something that kind of altered momentum in favor of Oklahoma going into the first half and allowed them to be able to put themselves in a position where they scored and they were able to kind of keep pace with Alabama. Now you're going on the road into an environment that Oklahoma usually doesn't lose at. They have found ways to beat teams that have a similar offensive identity approach as you, that are going to allow you to play with an exceptional defense that puts you in a position where third and long, you've got to be right on the money. Your dichotomy of being able to kind of stretch the field, you really have to be decisive with your play designs. And if you do that, then I think that you're in a pretty good spot. Alabama, again, you look at the numbers, they were really, really good on third down. They were excellent when it came to passing. They outgained Oklahoma by, as you mentioned, 200 plus yards. They just have to be able to close the gap, and they cannot have those ill-advised turnovers. And that's been an issue, I think, for Ty Simpson over the last month. He'll make some really good throws, and he does a lot of good things that you want to see from an NFL mindset of calling the play at the line of scrimmage or changing up the tempo or relying on an audible to make the switch. But you got to be able to execute it properly. And I think that the injuries have been an issue, but I think also when it comes to just the overall persona of the team, they haven't been able to get that at the next level. So I think that when you look at this game, that's going to be something that's really going to have to decide the outcome. For Oklahoma, can we get more of John Mateer of what we saw in that LSU game with consistency? Because a lot of people want to turn to the 3 turnovers, and I completely get that. Like, absolutely, that's a major issue that has been something that has bothered Oklahoma's passing attack. But we don't spend enough time on the fact that he threw for over 300 yards. Like, he did stretch the field and was able to connect downfield with Deion Burks, with Javonte Gibson, with Isaiah Tatanga. He was making plays, and he was able to get those vertical passes to go 25, 30 yards. And that's something that's really beneficial, I think, for a team like like Oklahoma, because as long as you're able to rely on the explosives at a consistent basis, it may only be 4 or 5 plays, but those 4 or 5 plays may lead to 28 points. And that's really where I think that you're looking right now at the standpoint of Oklahoma's offensive personnel. They're going to have to force some turnovers. The good news is our Mason Thomas is back for this game. He has been the difference maker and the X factor on the defensive line. The fact that they were able to pressure Alabama in that matchup without him kind of says like they're more than just a defensive lineman away from making play after play. And then their secondary has done a good job of playing in a man coverage to where they keep everything in front of them and they force quarterbacks to kind of veer away from deep shots down the field and kind of dink and dunk their way to success. And not many people have been able to say that they can make that happen. What's going to be intriguing to me is how are you able to trust the rushing attack of both these teams? But for Oklahoma, do you have some design runs that are just set for John Mateer? Or do you have some design runs to where maybe you're willing to run an option and you know that you're about to have the gap closed on you with Deontay Lawson, so you pitch to the outside, whether that be to Torrey Blaylock or whether that be to Javonte Barnes or whoever is going to be your starting running back for this matchup. You got to be able to trust that you can get the ball moving and put yourself in better positions to score. And as long as you're in field goal range for Tate Sandell, it feels like right now you're guaranteed to walk away with 3 points. That's kind of the difference, I think, between Alabama and Oklahoma, where you know that special teams will play such a big-time deal. They did it in the last game because of a missed field goal and a muff pump were the difference of Alabama going into the SEC championship at 11-1 or sitting there at 10-2 and Oklahoma being in the playoffs. Those are going to be just little things that go a long way. I think the other thing is, what did we see change from the offensive personnel underneath Kalen DeBoer that didn't work that first time around? What were some things that didn't work for Brent Venables, who, again, calls plays defensively, that allowed Alabama to capitalize and put up some points when really they probably should have forced 2 or 3 more turnovers in that game and it be a blowout in Bryant-Denny Stadium? So how you adjust from those little details that kind of allowed this game to be too close for comfort, whoever does that at a better rate, I think is going to end up winning this football game, and they're going to win pretty soundly.
It's one of the oldest cliches in football, but whichever quarterback makes the least mistakes in this game, I think their team is going to win it, because there hasn't been a ton of evidence the last few weeks of the season to trust either one of these quarterbacks all that much. I think I put more stock in Ty Simpson. Yes, he got off to a hot start. He was in the Heisman conversation. It's just been very up and down and inconsistent. Part of that has been the supporting cast. You don't have that argument for John Mateer. Like, he has the supporting cast. Is the running game, the offensive line really stellar? No, but he has the weapons to get it done. For Ty Simpson, it's kind of, well, the availability of select guys, and then also who's going to step up in the passing game to really help him out. So I think I trust Ty Simpson in this situation a little bit more. And also, I think taking the time to take a breath after the regular season is so important for these teams going into the first round of the college football playoff. These offenses have struggled for the last handful of weeks. Oklahoma, I think, much more than Alabama. Taking that time to reassess and understand, how do we just win this matchup? Not a question of what are we going to deal with X weeks down the line within the SEC, and how do we make the playoff? It's nope. It doesn't matter about style points, any of those sorts of things. It's just how do we win this game? I am very excited about the matchup between the offense of Alabama and the defense of Oklahoma. That's where you're going to have all your attention on this game. The interesting thing is Alabama is favored by 1 point right now, according to the odds makers. So this really does feel like a coin flip. I've said it before on this show. I do think Alabama is the more proven and battle-tested team long-term. I know Kalen DeBoer has been under a lot of fire recently. Is he staying? Is he going? He's made it very clear he's staying. And meanwhile, anybody that's a Michigan fan is expecting him to leave. So it's just this very weird situation in Tuscaloosa, at least from the outside looking in. I think Alabama is proven in this circumstance. Oklahoma, you can't discount the home field advantage. You cannot discount, in my opinion, the best defense in college football. So the over-under is 40.5, and that feels really good. Like, I love the under in this game. I think it's going to be a dogfight for all 4 quarters. I am really excited to see this game. Like, this is the playoff game of the weekend, in my opinion.
By the way, I apologize. Xavier Robinson, not Javante Barnes, was the name that I was looking for, and I was slipping over it. So my bad on that one. The thing that I'm also really intrigued with in this matchup is, can either one of these teams run the football?
Yes.
Because of, again, I mean, like, this has been a pattern for both these rosters of, you say that you think that you know that you can run it, but at some point, stats don't lie. Neither team is good at moving the sticks on the ground. Neither team is able to trust having a legit number 1 running back. And both offensive lines are faulty enough to where if you are forced to kind of win through the air, you got to ask yourself, what is more desirable? A Ty Simpson that might dink and dunk his way downfield for at least a touchdown, or relying heavily on John Mateer to get those explosive plays? And both do work. I mean, like, the thing is that both offenses cater to some of the strengths of what stands out about these two squads. But at the same time, one is more reliable than the other. And partially, if you're Alabama, if you just make sure that you run toe-to-toe with whoever's the receiver, whether that be Deion Burks or Satanga, or whether that be you look at the tight end play with Jaren Kanak, as long as you're able to kind of just play physical press man coverage and you're not getting flagged for 15 yards, even though Alabama won't do much offensively through the air, they might just do enough to say they're the better team when it comes to moving the sticks through the passing attack.
Because Oklahoma in some of their big wins was so reliant on the turnover, I wonder if and when that kind of luck runs out. If they can't get enough from and that's not to say that Oklahoma doesn't force some of those turnovers, that they don't create some of them. I know that Venables, if he was here sitting in, maybe he's listening and can comment at some of his thoughts. I know that he would push back against that pretty hard. Turnovers, there is most of the time some amount of luck that is created with turnovers that happen. And I know they force them, but I start to wonder if and when that luck starts to run out, or when you only win that turnover margin by 1 because your quarterback makes a mistake or 2 as well. And, they were dominated from a yardage perspective. They were dominated from a time of possession perspective, which I know that can sometimes be misleading, but they won the turnover battle by 3. They won the game by 2. If not for any one of their turnovers, they don't win, right? Like, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So I wonder if they can get enough from their offense. Like, I do think home field matters. I'm not very confident in Bama with the way they've looked. I do think some of the time off, some of the rest that they've gotten will certainly be a good thing for Alabama. But I look at, like, the path. I've said this a lot this year. I've used the phrase path to victory. And Oklahoma's path to victory, to me, feels like it needs a little bit of chaos. Whereas with Alabama, I think if both teams just kind of play their game, I do have a little bit more confidence in them to get it done. So I think I lean Alabama here. I don't know if we lost Cole. I know we lost video and audio for a moment, but I'll do a prediction. I don't care. I think I like Alabama low scoring. I don't know. It'll probably go over because I'm saying this. Yeah, so I'll take the slight over. Close game, 24-20.
I'm going to take the under. It was 40.5. I'll take Alabama 20-17 in this game. So I'm really excited about this one. I think Miami, Texas A&M has the ability to have more fireworks in terms of potential scoring in this game. But Alabama, Oklahoma feels like one of these teams is going to be able to potentially knock off Indiana in the second round. I know there's a lot of momentum and excitement behind Indiana right now, but I've said it before. I think Bama could beat Indiana in the second round. And I think Oklahoma, given the right defensive performance and really safe offensive football, they could beat Indiana too. So I think this is a really exciting path.
I think that at the end of the day, what do I trust more? Because here's the thing. I think the first of 24 wins this game. I think this is a very low-scoring affair. It's two defenses that, when given the opportunity to game plan, they both can be great. I think one is elite and one is solid. On the flip side, I think one offense is decent and one offense is almost unbearable to watch. So which shows up is going to be the big question from that standpoint. And ultimately, I think both could work. It just really comes down to kind of pick your poison. Do you think that Alabama can win by time of possession, avoiding the turnovers, and living in situations to where they can just get inside the red zone? Or Oklahoma can force turnovers on Alabama, work with short field position, and just kind of trust Tate Sandell's leg to put them in a position where that might be good enough just to guarantee a win. And neither team, in my opinion, I feel confident can go on a run toward the national championship. But I do think that there is enough gusto to where defensively you leave enough meat on the bone to send you to that next round and put a team like Indiana at least on noticeable watch of an upset coming.
Do you have a prediction in this one, Cole?
Bama's going to win. Bama's going to win ugly. It's going to be something, I think, along the lines of 20-17. I'll be nice and say I thought the 24 was the number. So I'm going to go 24-17 final score. I just think that Alabama, I've seen enough of their offense to believe, even with all of the negations that we watched in Atlanta, having a couple of weeks off, Ty Simpson going back to the well, back to the drawing board, looking at the things and the mental mistakes that he made in that first start, they end up coming back to kind of be the reason why he is able to fix the faults and get just enough to guarantee them that they advance to the next round.
On to College Station. Again, I'm a Grinch today because of this soda that I'm drinking. I hate this game is at noon. I understand why. I understand ESPN punted the other two crappy games. Sorry to the 4 teams that are playing in those, but it is what it is. I'll be nice next week because it'll be Christmas week. I don't even know what we're doing next week. We'll have to figure that out. But I don't love that. I don't love this is at noon. I think it helps Miami that they don't have to go into Kyle Field at 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. local time. But I hate that this is the noon kickoff. I'm in a bad mood about it. But again, maybe good for the Canes. Tom, you want to start us off on this one?
This is another one. The quarterback play, I think, is really interesting. And TJ, you and I were talking about this before we came on here. Like, I think Mendoza is probably the best quarterback in the playoff, but there's a lot of average to above average quarterback play. And these are two very different guys in this whole situation. So first off, I think from a defensive standpoint, these are two of the best defensive lines in the country. I'm really excited to see which one wins out. I think I lean more towards what Texas A&M is able to do in this game, but Miami is going to attempt to commit to running the football. So that is going to be a matchup to watch in this game. On the flip side, Texas A&M, you've seen Marcel Reed have his high points when he can really get the ball down the field. He has some elite wide receivers that he can work with, but running the ball has not always been like super consistent for Texas A&M this season. So Marcel Reed up against Miami's defense, I think there's going to be opportunities for explosives in this thing. I think the thing that really separates these two, because they feel so similar, they feel like two teams with a lot of talent, sure, but when you look at the meat of their schedule and you really analyze it, who did they really play of substance? There's maybe 1 or 2 games that you can point towards of, oh, yes, that was a big-time opponent that they went up against. But it's been a minute for those teams. Like Texas A&M, yes, you just dealt with Texas, of course, but like Texas isn't even in the playoff. And then you have Miami up against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's not even in the playoff. And these are some of the wins that they built their resumes on. So I'm curious to see how these guys play in this game. I really think this is a game where Marcel Reed's legs and ability to improvise are going to be the key, because you do not have that luxury with Carson Beck. And I think that defensive line, that defensive front for Texas A&M is going to make life very difficult for Carson Beck. I think they're going to make it hard for Miami to run the football in this game. Carson Beck, for all of the gifts that he has as a passer. Not terribly mobile. He has good weapons in the passing game, but I still think I like what Texas A&M is going to be able to do in terms of pressuring him, limiting the running game for Miami in this game. And then again, if you put this game on Marcel Reed, it can go in one of two directions violently, unfortunately. But for the bulk of this season, we've seen him really mature. We've seen him step up as a passer and just as a game processor. I don't think he's an elite game processor, but I think the element that will separate this game for Texas A&M is his ability to make something out of nothing if the play breaks down and that Miami defensive front does win. And they will win. They will have their opportunities to do that. This is another one that it could be low scoring, just like Alabama and Oklahoma, but there's the athletes on the field offensively for both of these teams to rip off explosives, to put points on the board. So this should be a really fun game. I think I'm leaning with Texas A&M in this one thus far. Cole, I don't know how you feel.
This is going to be a back and forth game for all the different reasons I think that you're going to see in the Oklahoma-Alabama game. I think this is going to be high scoring because Miami was playing with fire down the stretch. They went into Pittsburgh and they were able to play in the cold weather and they dominated in that matchup. And they went to Blacksburg and they dominated in that matchup too. And Carson Beck looked better than he had throughout the entire last 2 months of action. So there's things to like about what we've seen from Miami. What I look at on the opposing side is how many of your superstar athletes are going to be at full speed if you're Texas A&M? Because Lavian Moss potentially being back in this game is a difference maker beyond belief. It is definitely a trendsetter that I think puts a lot more pressure on Miami's defensive line to have to go ahead and stop the run. Having Mario Craver back at full speed is a game changer on the outside for these cornerbacks that Miami has that played well during the stretch, but still have their faults of allowing some explosive plays. On the flip side, though, I will say I think the most dangerous player in this game is Malachi Toney. Like, if you give Malachi Toney a football with 7 yards and a bunch of running room, he is going to juke and jive past a slew of Texas A&M defenders and find his way into the end zone. So the difference between a team like Texas A&M and Miami is they may have more weapons, but if you shut them down and make them a one-dimensional offense, or you see the overall tendencies of Marcel Reed throwing into double coverage in the red zone that lead to turnovers, that might end up giving you enough momentum to say, all we got to do is find Malachi Toney, and wherever he is, it's a perfect 10 for us. We're going to be able to put up points. I love this match in terms of trench play. I think that both Miami and Texas A&M have had physical offensive lines all year. But to be completely transparent, the thing that's really been the benefactor, I think, of Miami this year has been their defensive line. They just get after quarterbacks. They're able to slow down rushing attacks, and they put pressure up the middle to make quarterbacks kind of rush through their delivery, and it can lead to turnovers or at least really bad throws on third down execution to get you off the field and get the ball back to their offense. But on the opposing side, Texas A&M is filled with depth. They have a really good front seven headlined by Cassius Howell that's able to win a lot of his one-on-one battles. The matchup between him and Francis Malaluga are going to be probably the big deciding factor of this game for Carson Beck. I think at the second level of the defense too, with linebackers like Scooby Williams and Torian York, they can make plays on the football and they can take away the tight ends and they can be able to win a lot of their battles at the 7 to 12 yard range. Where they're going to be able to at least make it where the deep ball pass is going to have to be evident for a guy like Carson Beck. And I don't know if he's going to be able to hit it on a consistent basis to guys not named Malachi Toney. Because again, Toney's been just the deciding factor in a lot of these games. And the way that he's just souped up and is able to go ahead and force defenders to kind of have to double team him, and it still doesn't matter because if he's just the best athlete on the field, really could decide a lot of the key elements in this matchup. I think that for A&M, the big storyline that I'm going to be paying attention to is where do the turnovers come and if they're able to force turnovers on Carson Beck. Because the last thing that you want to see is a team like Texas A&M do what we saw in the entire second half against Texas, or the first half against South Carolina, where they're giving the ball at midfield to allow a team that's playing with fire, probably could have the argument that maybe because of they get into the college football playoff as like a late addition because of they won that head-to-head against Notre Dame, but they weren't playing as good as Notre Dame, which I completely disregard. I think that they were playing as good as Notre Dame, if not better at times to close out the season. There's a lot to like about what Miami can do. You just don't want them living in situations where it's midfield and you have a fumble or you have a really, really bad interception. And here comes Carson Beck and company being able to get in a range to where at least they walk away with 3 points.
Tom mentioned this. Tom and I talked about this right before we came on. There's a lot of average to good quarterback play in this playoff, I don't know if anybody has been more boom or bust this year than Beck and Reed. Like in this playoff, like when either or both of them are really good, man, they're really hard to stop, and they're different in the way they go about it. But man, when Beck is on and he's not too locked in on Tony, who I agree because is probably the biggest X factor in the game, he is very surgical and does a great job. When he locks in too much on Tony, he costs you the game against SMU. Right. And so I think, and then Reed's the same way, right? When he's been really good, he's been really good. And against, Texas and others, he really struggled. So it goes back to kind of what we're talking about with the first game. I think whichever quarterback can play a little bit cleaner will probably put their team in a better position. Obviously, Ruben Bain is a factor. Obviously, Cassius Howell on the other side is a factor. I think whichever offensive line can hold up against the monsters that are on both defensive fronts is a very big deal. Which team gives up less explosive plays? Both these teams want to, I think Miami is a little more content to nickel and dime you and take things that the defense gives. But which defense can guard against that a little bit more? Does Miami give up a little bit more on the ground because they don't want to get beat deep? Or do they say, hey, if you can beat us that way, but you're not going to run us to death? I think all of that is kind of intriguing. Reed's escapability. You guys have mentioned all this, so I'm just kind of like hitting all the highlights again. But I think that all that plays into it. I honestly think I think Tom leaned the other way for the game in Norman. This is the game that intrigues me the most. Maybe just because I'm a sucker and like points. I was watching the Red Zone yesterday, and before Pat went out, Chiefs and Chargers was on at one time, and Bills, Patriots was on at the same time, and like that was a great like back and forth to watch because all the other games were blowouts or not really consequential. Yeah, that's what I think we're going to get is a lot of scoring, a lot of points, a lot of fun in this matchup, even though it's at noon, 11 o'clock Eastern. But I think this is one that is a lot of fun, and Ohio State showed a little bit of a chink in the armor. Now they may go back on a crazy run and win their next 3 games like they did last year. But if either one of these teams beats the other, it's not outside of the realm of possibilities that they could win in the next round too. I'm certainly not predicting that before either one of them either wins. But I think I'm leaning kind of like my Oklahoma thought here. So yeah, taking both road teams. This should work out great for me. Kind of like my Oklahoma pick or my Alabama pick against Oklahoma. I think that when the explosive play is there for A&M, they're really hard to beat. If that's not there, I have a little bit more confidence in Miami to just take what the defense gives, assuming that either quarterback doesn't have 2 or 3 turnovers or something crazy like that. I think I like Miami in this one. So I'll go a little higher scoring than that Oklahoma-Alabama game. I'll go 31-28. I think we get a good game. I think it's competitive and close. And I think Miami does just enough. Maybe it's a reverse jinx type situation where I'm trying to will it into not happening because I would certainly rather A&M win this, but I will say Miami takes it.
I think that even though this is going to be an 11 a.m. kick, and despite the fact that Carson Beck, who, by the way, the numbers back it up, over 1,100 passing yards, 11 touchdowns to 1 interception, and a 79.4 completion percentage over his final 4 games, even though I think he is playing better, I think home field advantage may have a slight lean in favor of Texas A&M. I get it's 11 a.m. I don't feel confident with this pick, but when you're easily matching on up, I think in so many ways, the last deciding factor for me is home field. I'm going to go Texas A&M. I don't at all feel like this is a good pick, but still 31-28. I just think they do barely enough to get on by. And I do agree with you. Whoever does win this game, I think is going to be the toughest task for Ohio State over the next few weeks.
I will take Texas A&M 31-24. I do think home field advantage. Kyle Field is a tough place to play, period. So I think this is going to be exciting for that reason. And to the point that TJ was making before, I am more interested, I think, in Alabama, Oklahoma, because I think both of those teams have the chance to beat Indiana in the second round. I don't think either of these teams can beat Ohio State in the next round.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I certainly hope they don't, because I have some narratives that need to live on no matter who Ohio State plays. So let's give some love to Sleeper real quick. Our code Sleeper on the Sleeper app, CFA, 100% match up to $100. We appreciate Sleeper for their support. We will be back on Wednesday at noon to, I don't even know what we'll talk about. Some of these portal guys, what the heck Michigan's doing, I don't know. But we will pick the games, the more or less on the Sleeper app. Make sure that you make some money with us. Check their terms and conditions because terms of use do apply. We will probably be quicker on these next two. But Cole, how does Tulane keep it a game? Maybe that's the best way to say it. Like, we don't need to, what's the path to, like, how do they keep this a 1 or 2 score game in the fourth quarter?
Okay, well, let's start off with the first thing. We've already seen this matchup happen before. It was a 45-10 victory. Tulane got outrushed by Ole Miss. What was the final in that one? 241 to 178. They were outgained 548 to 282. So the thing that I think you're going to have to look at, number one, can you establish any success in the passing attack? You know, Jake Retzlaff is not known for being the elite passer. He's known for being a runner. He's known for creating opportunities with his legs. But this is one of those games where you are going to have to, I think, win through the air, which is a lot easier said than done, especially against a team like Ole Miss, because they're a top 25 passing defense in college football. So you're going to have to win on third down. You're going to have to win the time of possession. You're going to have to trust somebody of the relationship on what you have with guys like Shaz Preston, what you got with the tight end play. You showed some growth at that when you faced off against North Texas a few weeks ago, get the ball to like Garrett Murnett, get the ball to Zachary Lewis, but not a lot of big-time shots down the field. So how are you able just to be able to kind of dink and dunk your way to set up the run by having a solid passing attack? I think the other way is that you're going to have to force Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey to be kept in check. Because remember, this was a game that last time we saw these two guys just basically go off against Tulane. It was not even a really close battle. Trinidad Chambliss had over 100 rushing yards, and Kewan Lacey found the end zone twice, and he averaged 4.2 yards a play. So can you force them to have to beat you through the air? Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because even when that was possible, you still had 2 passing touchdowns. Daquan Wright and Deuce Alexander both finished with averaging over 20 yards a play. Caden Lee caught a pass for 46 yards down the field. Dejon Stribling got involved with a big-time pass down the field. So, to me, what this really relies on is, are you able to keep things in front of you? Are you able to force them to be a one-dimensional offense? And can you make them live in third and long situations? If that's going to be the case, then I think that at least makes this an interesting first half. I'll go a step further and say, we don't know what we can expect from Pete Golding as a head coach, because now this is Pete running the show. And whether or not Charlie Wise Jr. was running the offense this past year, Lane Kiffin would veto plays and would say, we're not running this. I think we need to run this instead. And so now that this is all on you and you're in charge of all of the schematics, are there things that you would do differently than Lane to where you're trusting your gut to go ahead and execute? Or do you think that there are some things that maybe you got to lean on Lane from the past and say, in this situation, even though I want to be the head coach and I think that I am more than qualified to lead this team long term, what are going to be the things that I can do, that I can learn from Lane, that I use as an advantage to kind of go ahead and set myself up for success? I don't know if this is going to be a close game. I do think that this could be a close half. Ultimately, the talent level and the talent discourse between these two is what is going to be the difference in this matchup. And it's why I think that Ole Miss is going to be able to win this game and win this game pretty soundly. But being able to make this a 3.5 quarter battle might be a win for a team like Tulane, because it at least throws Ole Miss offense pattern. Maybe they have to switch up some stuff and be able to make some changes to what the offense has not been able to accomplish on a consistent basis. What are some things that you haven't seen that have put them at a position to where you know they can capitalize and put up some points? Just little things like that will go a long way. It's being able to throw a wrench into the plan of what has been Ole Miss all year.
This is extremely emotional for Ole Miss across the board. It doesn't matter who really is at the helm, I think, for this. I think Pete Golding is going to just continue to push what they are already doing in the right direction. It's his first game as the new head coach. You're not going to make tremendous changes, and especially against this Tulane team, let's be honest. So no disrespect to Tulane, but the gap in talent is there. I really throw out this notion I've heard publicly of, it's a safety issue for a group of 5 team to play an SEC team. Like, give me a break. These guys all play the same sport. I understand. Yeah, it's a huge difference in competition. And we need to get to a point where the teams that can credibly beat the other teams are in the playoff, and we're putting the legitimate best teams on the field. So that's a whole other conversation. This is the first chance for Ole Miss as a community to stand up and represent itself since Lane Kiffin left and went to LSU. It's the first opportunity that they're going to have to prove that they're okay after the breakup. It's going to be in Oxford. I expect that to be a fantastic environment. And especially if you're a member of this team, a player who is going to be there in 2026, for instance, you have so much to prove. This is about flipping the bird to Lane Kiffin in a lot of ways. This is about showing the country that you are for real within this college football playoff. Let's not forget, this is still the best season that Ole Miss football has ever had. There has perhaps never been more motivation for a team entering the playoff than for Ole Miss. So I'm really excited to see how they feel. And I think to all the points we said about, okay, we're still going to do some Lane things. The biggest Lane thing I expect them to do is run up the score. And it's nothing personal against John Summerall and Tulane. And listen, you got John Summerall, who has done all the right things on the way out. His donation of $100,000 recently was extremely, extremely thoughtful and very professional, I guess the best way to put it. John Summerall, there's no way he can be in two places at once and do a maximum job in both places. I just don't expect that. This is a tough situation for Tulane. Simultaneously, I just think that this is going to be an Ole Miss team that has everything to prove. It's about flipping the bird to Lane Kiffin, flipping the bird to LSU, and frankly, to a lot of people around the country who just are like, yeah, Ole Miss isn't the story. Nobody really cares about this. This is a Lane story. And it has been a Lane story, but this is Oxford's chance to have the spotlight on it. And the big question surrounding this team is going to be, okay, Lane's out. What are you really? I think Trinidad Chambliss is going to be able to have a very big game, and he has done that against lesser competition this year. So I'm not expecting anything different from Chambliss in this situation, but it's the supporting cast, both on offense and defense, guys stepping up and showing that this team, this roster is outstanding. Whether they go beyond this round and beating Tulane or winning in the next round, I have no idea. But this is a healing opportunity for Ole Miss fans, for them to show the entire country we are for real this season. And just because this whole catastrophe went down doesn't mean that we're putting something serious on the field here in round one.
I would love nothing more than, this would be a great, maybe not. Maybe that's a bad take. I was going to say I'd love nothing more than an upset just because, that'd be fun. But then you're just moving your blowout to the next round. So maybe that's not the great. It would be great to get a good game out of one of these second two games. And my thought is, and this maybe carries over to JMU too, that maybe the motivation for Tulane is really high too. Because, you don't want this to be your coach's last game. Not how much does that matter with such a gulf in talent? Maybe not much, but I think this could be close for a half. I don't know that it's 45-10 again. Eric asked in the comments what the score was. Maybe it's not that bad, but if this could be close for a half and give us some kind of entertainment or some kind of expectation to stick around for the second half, that would be great. I just don't know that I'm buying it. I think this thing could be over before we get to halftime, and that would probably be my projection. So I'll say they don't run up the score in a crazy amount because I think resting starters is important. So, 34-13. I'll say that they get an extra field goal than they did last time.
I'll be a little nicer to Tulane because I do think that they will get a late touchdown. It will once again be against backups, but still they'll get a late touchdown. I'm going to go 41-20. I think that Ole Miss goes out and they make a statement. They're trying to figure out a way to guarantee that people have to respect them under a new regime because this is more than just, I think, a win for them in the playoffs. This is a signal of just because Lane's gone does not mean our expectations are changing. We still believe that we're supposed to be one of the premier teams in the SEC. And when we have an opportunity to win, we're going to win big. So I think that they are going to try to set the tone in this game. I think that you will see Kewan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss have a really good first half. But ultimately, I do think that you are going to see a late backdoor run by Tulane to make this thing reasonable. So 41-20 final score.
I'm going 41-17 Ole Miss. If I'm Pete Golding and Charlie Weiss Jr. and Ole Miss, I do exactly what I've been doing all season long. Because earlier on this year, you played Georgia, and that was a hell of a game. And yes, that was an extremely difficult loss for them, but it wasn't a blowout by any means. Ole Miss put some points on Georgia, but Georgia did what they did all season long. They slowly came back and they were able to win that football game. If I'm Ole Miss, I do exactly what I've been doing all season long. I look like a carbon copy of Lane Kiffin's version of Ole Miss, because if you're fortunate to get past Tulane here and you play Georgia in the next round, that's when you start making changes. That's when you start putting stuff on the field where Georgia's like, oh, we thought they were just going to keep doing what they're doing, that sort of thing. That's where you try and surprise the Bulldogs.
On to the Big Ten blowout. We'll start with Tom for Oregon and JMU, as that one, that's the late game, right? That's the late game in Eugene. Tom, kind of the same idea. I'll pose it the same way to you that I did with Cole. How does this remain competitive into the second half?
It doesn't. I don't think it does.
All that buildup.
It just doesn't. Like, there's the gap here is significant. I think
it's a safety issue.
It's a safety issue. Now we're worried about the kids, right?
Shut up, bud.
Here's my thing. Oregon has been dealing with a lot of injuries this season, and they've been banged up at some critical positions, but they've still continued to move forward. Obviously, the losses that they've had have been reasonable, and you can understand the gaps that they have. They've had some time now to get ready for this game, and you expect to beat James Madison and then moving on potentially to the next round to face Texas Tech. This is the easiest path to the Final Four within the college football playoff for a team coming out of the first round. If I'm Oregon, you don't need to kill James Madison. I understand there's the conversation of like, well, what Liberty was a few years ago in a bowl game against Oregon. It's different. The stakes are higher in this situation, but I'm not expecting a blowout the way that I'm expecting a blowout for Ole Miss versus Tulane, because Ole Miss is something to prove to the world. Oregon doesn't have anything to prove to the world. They just need to clear stage one, and they need to clear stage one healthy. And they need to buy time for their guys like DeCorian Moore to get healthy. So that way, when or if they play Texas Tech in the next round, they have as many weapons available as humanly possible. So I'm not really expecting this to be just fireworks, touchdown after touchdown. I think that possibility is there simply because of the gap in talent. But if I'm Dan Lanning and I'm Oregon, again, you do what you do. You keep things simple. You've committed to the running game a lot more as you've lost some weapons in the passing game as the season has gone on, but you should be able to get those guys back for Texas Tech. Dante Moore does all the right things with this offense. I know he's had some up and down games this season, but I think if this guy chooses to go into the NFL draft this year, he's going to be highly coveted. He can do a little bit of everything, and I think that's what's really intriguing about him is that he stays calm under pressure. He can run if you ask him to, but he's very comfortable staying in the pocket. You can do design runs. He can extend the play. He is very good throwing the football downfield. He's got to get a little bit better in terms of protecting the football. But Dante Moore, I think it's him and Fernando Mendoza as the two best quarterbacks in this college football playoff at this point in time. So I just don't think you're going to see Oregon struggle a whole lot. I think you're going to see James Madison come fired up in the first half. And again, we've been talking about home field advantage throughout this thing. Kyle Field and Autzen Stadium, two of the toughest places to play in college football. James Madison is literally going across the continent to play the Ducks in this situation. So I just don't expect this to be close. I don't even know if this is worth getting into X's and O's, but if either of you have some X's and O's, knock yourselves out.
Cole, give us a schematic breakdown of JMU. Take about 30 minutes and let's really dive into just overall thoughts, and we'll move on to more.
Okay, so let's say that there is a way for this to at least be an interesting first half. Number one, JMU has got to trust its rushing attack, and they got to be able to win on short yardage situation. They do have two guys that you can trust in the run game. Wayne Knight, he averages about 6.6 yards a play, and then Alonzo Barnett, the quarterback, he averages about 4.7 yards a play. Combined this year, they have, if I'm not mistaken, 22 touchdowns. So can you win on the ground consistently? The other thing that I will say, you have to be able to have a good understanding of what is going to be your situation. Like, can you be able to win with time and possession and then put yourself on the board? Now, I'm not saying that you have to score a lot of points. I'm saying, can your defense slow down a team like Oregon to where you score first? That's all I'm asking for. Can you find a way to score first? Maybe it is on the opening drive. Maybe it's in the second quarter and it's a back and forth battle to where it's 3 and out. Can you score first to set the tempo for this game? The other thing is, are you going to be able to force a turnover on Dante Moore at any point in the season? Like at any point in the game, can you force a turnover with a short field position to at least give you the opportunity to stop the back and forth blows? I think that you want to be able to win when it comes to the possessional matchups. Basically, what that means is you have to have more possessions than a team like Oregon. Oregon can score on 5 possessions 35 points. Can you get it 8 times and score 38 points is kind of the question that you have here. Again, a lot easier said than done. The thing that I'm looking for from Oregon's standpoint is, what do we see from the players that have been dealing with injuries as of late? DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant, and Evan Stewart. So according to, if I want to make sure I say his name right, James Crepa, I think he's a beat reporter out in Oregon. Both DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant were at practice today. So that's a good sign that you will have them, even in a limited capacity, to be able to get back in some meaningful reps underneath their belt alongside with Malik Benson and Kenyon Sadiq. So having them back, seeing what their rep count could be, even if it's at a very small vicinity, it will allow you to have the opportunity to build that repertoire when it comes to a certain identity and a consistent factor for Dante Moore to be able to build a repertoire. If you're able to get back Evan Stewart for this game, I think that that's where people have to start paying more attention to you as a legit threat to go on a run to the college football playoff. Because I love what their offensive line is. We already know that they have the number 1 secondary in college football. They have one of the best scoring defenses in college football. They're great when it comes to the pass rush. They're good in the trenches, being able to stop the run. They're top 20 in that capacity. If you're able to have more weapons and more of a consistent passing attack vertically down the field and being able to kind of pick your poison if you're Dante Moore, this is a matchup that I think is going to really benefit you in so many different ways, to where you look like the most complete team in college football. And the thing that I really do like about this matchup for Oregon is the thing that we watched last time that we had the college football playoff, were teams that played in the first round were able to get their feet and traction underneath them and use that game as a tune-up for the next round. And every single team that had to bye lost. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. But if there was one game that I do think does not favor a team like Texas Tech, it is a revamped up Oregon that has the identity to be able to trust winning on all 3 stages of the games: offense, defense, and special teams. I think that the bottom line is that JMU can make this an interesting first quarter, the way that Tulane can make it an interesting first half. But at the end of the day, the Jimmies and the Joes outweigh the X's and the O's. And you can only game plan so much as a Sunbelt team going on the road as a 3-touchdown underdog in a night venue at a stadium that does not get enough national recognition for how daunting of a place it is to play and be able to pull off the upset. It just feels like you have so many things stacked against you. I think that, again, watching this matchup, I'll be paying attention to how much is the passing attack potent for a team like Oregon, because that's going to be a deciding factor, I think, in the matchup against Texas Tech. And what are we going to see from JMU to respond once they're down by 14? If they can find a way to score, make this a 1-possession game, maybe we'll see this go into the half where it's a 21-14 or a 21-10 matchup before we watch as Oregon pulls away in the second half. But I think that really you're going to have to establish the run of your JMU. You're going to have to win on 3rd down. You're going to have to win with time of possession, and you're going to have to force a couple of turnovers in the first half to make this a game.
Yeah, you mentioned the way that, last year's playoff shook out versus this one. And obviously, Arizona State and Boise State were part of that. And then, Oregon ran into the buzzsaw that was Ohio State. Georgia had a quarterback out. So yeah, not a perfect 1-for-1 comparison, but I do, especially in these 2 games. And I know that Ole Miss has to play against Georgia, although that'll be neutral site, right, in the next round. But especially for Ole Miss and Oregon, man, the opportunity to not be on such a long layoff, right? You get that game, you can work out some of those kinks and have a lot of leeway. You think about that for the other 2 games, Oklahoma and Alabama, Miami and A&M, although Alabama did play. Supposedly they showed up to Atlanta. There has been a layoff for these teams, and you would think that by next week, that layoff that Texas Tech is experiencing, that Georgia's experiencing, and that Ohio State and Indiana are experiencing, the teams that have played this week are fresher and more ready to go. And if you also get to add in the benefit of some rest because of the level of competition that you're playing, if you're able to take care of things kind of early, I do think that this could be, especially this Oregon game. Georgia is going to be a tough out for Ole Miss next week without Heaven Lane there, or in a week and a half, because these are 10 days spread out because we need this thing to go till basically the Super Bowl. Grouchy TJ is back. I do think that man, this is a really good setup for Oregon, man. Like, you go play a Big 12 champion who I think we have all the respect in the world for, but I think we're all still kind of waiting like, all right, well, you beat BYU a couple of times, but like, let's see it elsewhere. Like, let's see what you can do, because I know that Oregon will get up for that. And I know they'll remember kind of how things happen. So, man, the way that this can be treated as a tune-up game, and really the Ole Miss one too, against against Tulane, are interesting to see, and more of a big picture kind of approach. I think, I don't even know. Scores don't even matter in this. I'll go with what Eric said, 45-10. I'll just take his score and use that. Thank you for the comments, Eric.
I'm going to say 35-10 Oregon. I just don't think Oregon's going to need to do a whole lot in this game. And to the points that Cole was saying about Bryant, Moore, and Stewart, who was lost in the offseason, like, there's no rush for any of those guys to come back. There's no rush for any of them to even play in this game. I understand your point about, hey, you get them out there and kind of get them back into game action so they can get their sea legs under them. You don't even need to do that. That's the difference in this game. You can wait, and then you can put all those weapons on the field against Tech in the next round.
I will say JMU had this number 2 run defense in the country this year. So if you're able to win through the air with a consistent basis, then by all means, that needs to be your MO. Because even though you do have really good running backs for Oregon, I do think that having a solid run defense will always be a benefactor for a team. I'll meet you in the middle for both. We're all going to agree with 10 points for JMU. I will go 38-10. I think that this is just enough to be able to see Dante Moore build a consistent balance in the passing attack, and you get a few late rushing touchdowns in from Oregon. They coast their way to face off against Texas Tech in 2 weeks.
Lastly here today, we'll talk, if we have a couple of minutes at the end, we'll see kind of what timing looks like. Maybe we'll talk portal, but the Sherrone Moore, Michigan stuff, obviously we're far enough removed. We're not breaking any news on Sherrone Moore. A sad situation that turned kind of crazy. Hopefully, things are, cooler heads are able to prevail overall in that situation. But so I don't have a lot of thoughts that I haven't already kind of shared and talked about on what happened last week with Michigan. And so I won't go super salacious on this, but just looking ahead for Michigan, ultimately the way it went about, probably not a good thing, but overall it happening, maybe not the worst thing to happen to Michigan. I don't mean to make light of very serious situations, but also don't think Sherrone Moore was the long-term answer there, or a great coach leading that program. And so the big question becomes, where do they go from here? So Tom, it's Big Ten, so I'll let you start it off. But and if you guys want to talk about more of the situation, that's fine with me. I don't care. But my thought more is like, all right, where are we at now? No pun intended.
Yeah, this whole situation, as you said, it's crazy. It's sad. It's terrifying in a lot of ways, because there's been information that's out there. It's like the worst is yet to come. So we just don't know how much worse this is going to get, not just for the Michigan football program, but Michigan athletics, the university. Like this has bad written all over it. To that point, who really wants to take this job? Now, it's one of the biggest brands in the sport, obviously. You have tremendous resources. You're within the Big Ten. You're the second most recognizable brand within your conference. Like, I understand the draw to take the job, but based on what could come out and the potential that there are famous Michigan alum that are actively in the NFL that potentially threatened Miss Shiver, terrifying. So do you really want to take this job? Do you really want to take over this situation? Everybody that's been talking about who should be the next head coach, it's been the same song and dance. Unfortunately, that's kind of happened with Penn State, just with a dumpster fire going on behind it. And Penn State's was pretty bad as well, but it was literally just every name under the sun that I think would even be remotely interested in this. Let's throw them up there. People continue to talk about Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has said, I'm not interested. I'm staying at Alabama, and rumors are there's an extension coming his way. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State has been a big name. It looks like there's an extension coming his way. If not, there already is one. Jed Fish is a name I think that people are focusing in on because he obviously worked there at one point, and his season is over. Yeah. So it would potentially make sense. But then if you're Jed Fish and the worst is yet to come, Why would you bounce from Washington to Michigan now of all times? Jesse Minter is another name that's been out there. Obviously has been a coordinator on this staff in the past, but has been underneath that Harbaugh regime. Do you really want to continue that if you're Michigan? And here's another thing. Who's making the hire? Is Ward Manuel still going to be the guy at Michigan as this thing continues to unravel? Like, there's so much uncertainty with this. I'm seeing the comments about Dave Portnoy here in the chat from Barstool Sports, him saying he's not going to put any more money forward to keep Bryce Underwood at Michigan. If you're Bryce Underwood, your career could blossom. Will it happen at Michigan? And I understand it's right down the road from where you played your high school ball and where you grew up, and there's probably a very deep connection to that. But you were also pretty deeply connected to LSU at one point. Not saying he's going back to LSU or whatever, but there's got to be a lot of rats jumping off the proverbial ship here in the near future. So this is nearly unpredictable for the future of Michigan football. And it's really complicated. Like this has gone so far beyond a sports story. It's not even funny.
So there's a couple things that we have to break down. Number one, I do not think that Ward Manuel should be making this hire. Me personally, with how much sanctions have come on underneath his regime, I do not think he should be the athletic director long-term. However, I'm not the one in charge of the process. There's so many other faults going on currently right now at a place like Michigan. I do think that he is going to be the one making the hire. So regardless of that, we move forward. For Sherrone Moore, from a man standpoint, just from somebody who also respects mental health, I hope you get the help that you need. Unfortunately, you put yourself in this position to begin with, and it's very hard to feel pity for someone who has put themselves in this standpoint. So still, I hope that you're able to find the right necessary resources to where this ends up being something that you can come back from. I don't know if it's possible. As for Michigan, the job, it still is Michigan. It still is, in my opinion, a premier job in college football. It is one of the big time overall locations to where it is very hard to turn down if given the opportunity, if you haven't already gotten that opportunity. Like, the reason why Kalen DeBoer, I truly believe, is not going to be the next head coach at a place like Michigan is because of you're already at a place like Alabama. The expectations are not changing. The overall gravitas of you beating Auburn or being in the running for the SEC title or being in the running for a national championship. The only difference of what you're doing is a lateral move up north, and instead of it being against Auburn, it's against Ohio State. But all the same goals and the expectations, they're there in Ann Arbor. So I feel like that it's just at this point a moot argument because if you're already at a place where the expectations are through the roof. I do think that Michigan fans want to spend money. I do believe that Dave Portnoy is willing to give more money to a program if he knows that the guy that they bring in is the right hire. The problem is that you're so late in the process of being able to go out and bring in some premier names. You have to be sold on either a Jedd Fisch or Kenny Dillingham to be the front runner, and you believe that he can be the reason why a program turns around, to even think for 1 second it's worth making that phone call. Now, I personally believe that Kenny Dillingham and Jedd Fisch, with the resources that they had in the state of Arizona. Because remember, Jedd Fisch took a team that was winless to a 1-win campaign, to a 6-win campaign, to a 10-win campaign with almost nothing at his disposal. I think he can win at a place like Michigan if you get the buy-in. I think that Kenny Dillingham, what he's been able to accomplish at a place like Arizona State. And I understand that it's an alumni situation and that you really do care about building an identity long-term at your alma mater. But jobs like Michigan don't come open often for people like you who may right now be the hottest name on the search. And 3 to 5 years from now, you could be an afterthought. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And I think that plays a big time role. But people will invest in what you've been able to accomplish because if they've seen what you've been able to work with and turn from fool's gold into consistent attacking approach in just a span of 3 years, I think that means a lot to the people out in Michigan. But this is a premier job. You cannot be settling for underwhelming names. You have to swing for the fences because of you want to guarantee that you're able to retain a lot of talent, that you're going to get the buy-in from the people that are writing the checks. People are not going to be entering the transfer portal. They see a vision underneath you that is sustainable. And keep in mind, guys, this team finished 9-3. They didn't look good in 2 of their matchups, but they still finished 9-3. The roster that they have in place right now, if it doesn't go be dispersed via the portal, can be right back in the conversation with the great offensive mind to maybe be in the college football playoff in 2026, have a good shot of winning the Big Ten in 2026, and be a national title contender in 2026. You just have to have the right person in charge and a good support staff that is going to elevate the stats of this roster. So there's a lot of names I think are going on. I think there's a lot of names that are being floated out right now. I don't think that they're going to make a hire within the next 24 hours, 48 hours. It may not even be until after the second round of the playoffs for all we know. But I think that Michigan is going to do its due diligence to guarantee that whoever they hire, they believe is meant to be a Michigan man long-term and not the one that we heard underneath Jim Harbaugh. I think right now, if you are anybody in part of the Michigan organization, you're thankful for what Harbaugh was able to bring. You're consistent and you are, you never will complain about the fact that you won a national title, but you need to veer yourself away from that coaching tree and that idolization for at least the time being to kind of hit reset on where you are as a program. That's why I think that you have to go out and bring in a proven college name. And while Jesse Minter makes a lot of sense, I would just steer clear of any bit of anyone tied to the Harbaugh name at this point right now.
Let's quickly, just before we get out of here, let's quickly just talk about Lagway to the portal, Raiola to the portal, Sorsby to the portal. There's a lot of big stuff going on. I've heard that some more stuff could come out of Florida. I know they lost Jordan Castell. They lost a tight end as well. There's a running back that Cole and I are big fans of that.
He's not leaving. I refuse to believe he's leaving.
That could surprise me a little bit talking to some Florida, that wouldn't surprise me is maybe a better way to say that. Speaking with some Florida folks.
You shut your whore mouth.
I don't know if it'll be I don't know if it's a mass exodus, but I mean, once Lagway left, I think everything was kind of wide open there. So any quick thoughts on this portal cycle?
I'll say about Dylan Raiola, I'm not shocked. And it's a huge indictment on Matt Rule and what he has been doing and what he could do at Nebraska. The fact that they gave him an extension, it's up there with Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, kind of one of those head scratchers of like, okay, like, did you need to do that? Like, was it more difficult to go find somebody better who could do a better job there? So if you're Nebraska's athletic department, you're looking at Matt Rule being like, that was the hood ornament for this new vehicle you were presenting to us here in Lincoln. Dylan Raiola, for all of his gifts, he needs a lot of work. And I understand people are going to make the connection to Georgia because that's where he was initially committed. And then he was flipped last minute, has family ties to Lincoln. Yes, there's the joke out there about him going to Texas Tech. Already Pete Nakos has been on social media and said that that's unlikely. Texas Tech is interested in their backup, Will Hammond, who's recovering from injury. So they kind of have their person for the future at the quarterback position. Dylan Raiola needs to go to a program and a coaching staff that is going to wake him up. If his goal is to play in the National Football League, and I believe it is, and I believe he has the physical gifts to play in the National Football League, he has to mentally and emotionally mature. This Patrick Mahomes cosplay that we all make jokes about, it's funny until it's not funny. We're all looking at the situation with Fernando Mendoza going into the National Football League and the draft this upcoming cycle, having just won the Heisman. Everybody's like, he's kind of a dork, but he's got all the attributes and he could be a really good quarterback. But like, is he face of the franchise? Those questions will be magnified to 1,000 for Dylan Raiola if he doesn't stop looking exactly like his icon, walking around and behaving just like his icon, and then also disregarding the basic mechanics of playing the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes can physically get away with that. And it's been well documented how that's affected the development of young quarterbacks now for many years, because they're like, oh, if he can throw off 1 foot with his eyes closed across his body, then surely I can do that as well. No, you can't. Patrick Mahomes is a special talent because he's one of one. There's nobody else like him. So Dylan Raiola needs to go to a program with a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator, and a head coach that are going to say, you need to wake up and you need to work on all these pieces within your game. Because if you watch his tape at Nebraska, and granted, he did not have great weapons to throw to. He had a running game this year in Emmett Johnson, but an offensive line that has been consistently bad. And he's taken a ton of hits. If he gets the elements around him that can help him be successful, that's great. But you also need to learn how to plant your feet and freaking throw the ball and have proper mechanics as a quarterback and be a processor and be a problem solver, as opposed to just attempting to be Patrick Mahomes. So that's what I sincerely hope for the young man in Dylan Raiola. But the truth in this whole portal situation, I'm seeing people say, oh, he should go to Oregon. They've done a great job developing quarterbacks. Well, he's not really a dual threat quarterback, is he? He's a little nimble, but he's more of a pocket guy. That's not what Dan Lanning wants. You need to go to a place that is going to wake you up. And unfortunately, kids that age, they don't really want to be challenged that much. He went to Nebraska. He wasn't challenged by Matt Rule to change, to evolve. And even getting, what's the name of Dana Holgerson in there, who is one of the traditionally tougher quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators. Nothing changed really about his overall behavior. Is he willing to be challenged? Is he willing to be coached hard? Is he willing to go someplace where it's like, hey, you're going to get all these things and you're going to be a great NFL player, but we're not going to pay you a ton of money? That's the other thing. So there's a lot of factors to it. I sincerely hope the best for Dylan Raiola.
Dylan Raiola needs to go to Miami. And the reason he needs to go to Miami is because your last quarterback was the number 1 overall pick, and your current quarterback led you to the college football playoffs. Mm-hmm. If you want to be coached properly and you want to be coached on what the expectations are with a great offensive line, with solid weapons that are going to be returning, and a hotbed transfer portal destination, you go to Miami and you learn how to play underneath Shannon Dawson, because he does not put up with anybody's shit, and he makes sure that everybody is well prepared if you're going to be playing quarterback in the NFL. So I do believe that ultimately that is where we will see Dylan Raiola land. I think that was been a conversation from the get-go, is make sure that when it becomes available, you get to go work with Shannon Dawson wherever he may be. As for DJ Lagway, it's going to be very interesting because there is going to be a market for him. I still believe that the best is yet to come. According to people that I spoke to, he wanted to stay at Florida. A lot of people have also reported that the conversation between him and John Summerall and the new staff did not go according to plan, but it wasn't a money thing. So now this is all going to be about a scheme fit thing. I like 3 locations for him. The first one is Texas Tech. I think that they're not entirely sold on Will Hammond. Remember, Will Hammond's going to be coming off a season-ending injury. So at this point, you could have a legit conversation on, do you think that a guy like DJ Lagway will flourish in an offense headlined by Mac Leftwich? The second one, I think that Darian Mensah is going to enter the transfer portal, and he is going to get paid elsewhere. So do you think Duke is one that maybe you go to, you follow the Malik Murphy path of go to a place like Duke for a year, figure out some things with your mechanics, then go cash in the next season? And then the third one is, I love him at Tennessee. And I don't think that for an NFL standpoint, him going to Tennessee is a good fit whatsoever, because Josh Heupel's offense is not going to translate to the NFL. But the strengths of what stand out about DJ Lagway fit so much in a Heupel offense. It will allow you to be able to work with that deep ball accuracy. It will allow you to trust your mobility. It will allow you to have a more balanced approach of testing the waters when it comes to how to run a certain brand of offense that caters to your strengths. And all the strengths that fit for DJ Lagway work in a Josh Heupel system. So those are the 3 that I'll be paying attention to. There's certainly going to be some other teams out there. I think Baylor can easily make a run for him. Remember, his dad played there when he was in college. I think there could be some teams like maybe even Oregon going after him. Certainly some others around the ACC and the Big 12 are going to be interested. DJ Lagway, I think, can really flourish in the right system. I think that right now, those would be the 3 I would lean. The final one that I'm looking at is Brendan Sorsby. And Sorsby was the latest addition to come on in. He kind of fits with a lot of different personnels. I think the mobility makes him a really intriguing fit for teams that want to have an offense that is very balanced, but will trust the mobile quarterback to be able to pick up some speed. I would not be shocked to see a team like Florida go after Brendan Sorsby. But I think that right now, the top 2 that you're probably paying attention to are Indiana, the place that he was at before he transferred to Cincinnati, and then Texas Tech, because Texas Tech right now has a lot of money, and they feel like that they have a good understanding and dialect of what they need to produce quality quarterback play.
Sorsby to Penn State is also getting a lot of conversation because of Jack Griffith, and that was one of the reasons why he went to Cincinnati in the first place. So there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding who Penn State's quarterback is going to be next season. Is it Ethan Grunkemeyer? Is it Rocco Becht? Is it somebody else? Sorsby could be somebody valid.
All right. That's all the time we have for today. We'll be back Wednesday at noon to see what else crazy has happened in the college football world. We've already previewed our games, though, so unless something crazy happens, we won't be previewing any games on Wednesday for the playoff. The bowl games are probably not incredibly worth previewing either, so maybe we'll have some fun. We'll do something that we'll do 5 wild cards or
Tell
something
us what
crazy.
you'd like to hear. Tell us what you guys would like to hear.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Somebody comment, who's the possible underdog? Yeah, I mean, we can do like theoretical stuff about the playoff. We'll still talk about the playoff. Like, I'm going to save that for Wednesday. Eric, give me a minute on Wednesday, and we'll do that on Wednesday. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday, live at noon Eastern. We'll be on time this time. Actually, I say on time. We're always like 2 or 3 minutes behind, but we'll be here closer to noon on Wednesday. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll talk to you soon on the Power 2.